the defamation case which we just had. Am I getting this right? Is this an allegation about some kind of sexual assault that was made in the 1970s, which has never been prosecuted, never been reported to the police by the claimant, and Trump has denied it, as is his right, and he's called the person who is making this claim a liar, which follows from the fact that he's denying it, and she, on that basis, has been defamed by him in some way and has been awarded $83 million in compensation. Because if that is the what's happened, as it seems to me it is, then that is that's nuts. I mean, that is the legal system again completely turned on its head. And the other case, which is the fraud case, which is that, he said that the value of certain buildings was higher than some people think it was, but he did that after apparently consulting experts. He obtained loans from banks on the strength of that. The banks were perfectly happy to lend him their money. They weren't too concerned about the value of the buildings, and he paid them back, and he paid them back with interest. And that is fraud. I mean, I am completely unable, I really am, to understand the reasoning behind these decisions. I mean, surely, if there is an appeal system here, they must collapse under the weight of their own absurdity.
Hey, everybody. Wow, that was some intro there. So first off, that clip was Alexander Mercouris from the Duran, kind of summarizing the whole situation that Donald Trump finds himself in, which is insane, to be clear. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because, I mean, this is what all Democrats are happy to support now. I mean, the fact that these jury verdicts have come in shows you something about the nature of people in general, I think. The fact that, because Democrats, I mean, you can't say all Democrats are evil people. Evil people are like 4% of the population. But in a jury of Democrats, this is the things that they will do. And these are, we're going to talk about in general, how good people can be motivated to do bad things. And at some point this year, we can finally put this Kristina Karamo stuff to bed. It's time to start talking about the Democrats. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Rescue Michigan Weekly live stream. We've got friends of the show on tonight: John Rocha, Andrew Seabolt, Matt Wilk, all on their way to becoming regular guests of this show. We've got a lot to talk about, principally Kristina Karamo related stuff, because the county conventions are coming up. And I should also say, because I saw some comments in the chat there about that intro music, we're still experimenting with the idea of having like a kind of a 1 minute countdown, giving folks time to get in. And I figured, some good old fashioned rock and roll is a great way to get the Kristina Karamo wackos to tune out, because they're like, oh my God, those are the devil music. There's some distortion guitar and some double bass drum pedals there. And what the heck is that we're listening to? I can't stand it. And so hopefully there's no more Kristina Karamo fans in the chat, but who knows? Anyway, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the Rescue Michigan live stream. How are you all doing on this lovely, unseasonably warm winter Sunday evening?
Another great night, Adam, and thanks for letting us join you.
Hey, happy to have you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful day. Walked the dog, went out for a workout. It was like it was springtime already, and it's February, so I can't complain at all.
Yep,
100%.
Yeah, I saw some kind of weatherman making a prediction that there's going to actually be some colder weather again later in February. That was his award-winning prediction. There might be some cold weather in February this year. But anyway, so we've got a lot to talk about. We've done a lot of live streams lately, like 3 this week, just between the Sundays. And I was surprised after we had no success tuning into the Grand Rapids hearing in the Kent County case, which is, of course, Pago et al. Versus Karamo et al. We did get a live stream into the Kalamazoo County case this past, I believe it was it Thursday morning? Wednesday? Yeah, Thursday morning. And I basically gave almost no commentary because part of me was really paranoid that they could hear me in the courtroom if I was saying things, because I had my, I had the Zoom meeting on. I had everything muted, but you just never know with these things. And of course, I'm sure all heard stories of when things go wrong with the mute and buttons on Zoom meetings. And so I was whispering very quietly, but there wasn't a whole lot. Well, I kind of summarized a little bit at the end. And Matt, you were tuning in, so I don't know if you want to start in with your thoughts on what we saw happening in Kalamazoo, but I think got a pretty good outcome personally.
Well, it's funny because in the Kent County case, basically the MIGOP came, not the MIGOP, sorry, Dan Hartman came in and said, I haven't read anything. I don't know what to say. The dog ate my homework. And the judge says, okay, I'll kick it off for a little bit. Judges are really disinclined to issue ex parte matters. They really dislike it. And they're not huge fans of TROs either. Those are very tough hurdles, both of them. And the crack MIGOP communications team called that a great legal victory. Okay. So we move on.
Legal victory is putting it off
for a week. So beyond that, the Kalamazoo County case, Dan Hartman didn't even show. They walked in and said, I didn't recognize the guy. I have no idea who he is. We never heard of him. He says, I'm representing these parties, and I don't know anything about this, but there's factual questions, so therefore TRO shouldn't issue, which is an awful argument. Matt DePerno walks up, takes the judge through the entire case. Judge asks a lot of pointed questions and says, basically, I'm going to give you a week to give some response. I'm going to give you until the 9th to provide data, and the hearing is going to be on the 13th, the following Tuesday.
Which is critical because that is before the county conventions on February 15th.
Correct. Before, that was important so that he could rule before the county convention on the 15th. So you've got things stacked up: the 13th, the 20th, I believe, in Kent County, and the 22nd, I believe, in Ingham. But that court case was, again, they're all different. In the Kalamazoo one, basically, you have this Kristina-driven group who lost an election, were thrown out of their party, and have come to Kristina to anoint them as the real party, which Kristina didn't do in front of her actual state committee. That was taken off the agenda repeatedly. She was only able to do that after she had been removed at her January 13th meeting. And, we get to see what the judge has to say about all that. So,
yeah, I think, as you say, Matt, judges are hesitant to just issue TROs, temporary restraining orders, which typically, because it's kind of like a finding before you've heard the evidence, sort of.
Right. Exactly.
And
the standard isn't would you win or lose? The standard is what you're losing so important and so irreplaceable that you can't wait. Now, in the case, because we have the convention stacked up, and think about Feb 15, county convention, slate elected in Kalamazoo to go to district convention / caucus, March 2 different groups of people are going to be elected. Who gets to go, when, where, why? Those are big things. There's also other concerns around state convention because, and Andy's laughing, I think he knows where he's going with this. There are people that are supposed to chair their district conventions on the 2nd. And some of them, Mr. Siebold, you've been excommunicated from the Church of Kristina Karamo, which I'm happy to have been. But that is, so they've got to act because that is irreplaceable. You can't bring everybody back together. And this is state mandated too. So the state has said, state and national GOP said, this is the way we've got to run things. So you have an irreplaceable harm so they can do it. Now, it's not the end of the event, right? They can change their minds after more evidence. But in this case, the evidence is sort of undisputed, or I think it ought to be. But we'll see what happens between now and certainly the 13th for sure.
Yeah, I don't know who that lawyer was that showed up that day. Maybe there was a guy named James Thomas, I guess jimmythomaslaw.com is his website, who was the attorney for the plaintiffs when Sabrina Pritchett Evans sued Kelly Sackett last year. So maybe it's that guy, but who knows? But
Yeah.
at any rate, I
Yeah.
mean, the thing that caught my attention about that, what ultimately happened was, I mean, two things. One is the judge did not dismiss the case. And he clearly had hesitations about Matt DePerno's arguments, because he was coming back and saying, well, you say that this is different because they're not part of the party, but they're going to say they are part of the party. And so, and Matt had to kind of pound on that and say, well, no, they're not. They don't have access to the bank accounts. They're not recognized, et cetera, et cetera. But the judge clearly had inclinations to the point where I was already thinking during that hearing, there's no way he's going to issue this TRO today.
Well,
But had he decided to adjourn till past the county conventions, that would have been a bad sign. The fact that he didn't dismiss the case, I mean, that was a really good sign.
Well,
So he wants to
sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works the other way around. Okay, so you go in front of a judge, and the judge doesn't ask the other side questions, but the judge wants to clear up everything on your side. So the judge says,
I'll have to look it up for you, Norm. I would just go to Rescue Michigan, and then you'll hit
hey,
the
Andy,
live.
You got some background talking happening there. Please mute yourself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyway,
so what happens sometimes is that the judge will ask questions, and the judge will say, I have 15 things on their side that I'm concerned about, and I have 3 on yours. And let's talk about yours. And that's what the judge, in my opinion, did. The judge went, because this judge has seen the Kalamazoo County people before and ruled previously, and they're trying to square the two rulings when the judge said, sort of not, I don't think he quite said, I'm not getting involved, but that has been Dan Hartman's line in all these cases. Courts simply cannot get involved. That is 100% untrue. That is a complete misreading of the case they're talking about. It's called Heitmanis. It was a case that involved the placement of national delegates in, I think, the 1988 convention. And it does not say that courts cannot get involved at all. In fact, courts got involved in that case. And there are other cases as well, including, for example, and this is a good one, Macomb County matter. So the court specifically in 2022 got involved in the Macomb County matter and overruled what the state party had to say. Adam, who was the attorney for the Rump Convention people in that case?
Enlighten me, Matt.
As I understand it, is Dan Hartman. So Dan Hartman went before a Macomb County judge and said, Your Honor, it doesn't matter what the state GOP at the time, Ron Weiser and Michonne Maddock, do. It matters whether the rules were followed. And the court ruled the rules were followed. Mark Fortin was the real winner. I deem it to be so. So,
well, and what I would bring up
but
in his brief is I would say, Your Honor, you had this ruling in this case last year where you said, gosh, I really wish we could talk about the violation of the bylaws issues in this case. Unfortunately, the plaintiff's attorneys failed to bring it, so I can't talk about it because they didn't raise that issue.
Right.
You could say, Your Honor, we're raising it now, but you clearly said if only they had raised a bylaws challenge, there might be something to talk about here.
Right. And what Matt gets to now say is the reason why you're all not part of the party is because we did in fact follow the bylaws. And for this audience and some people that are some co-panelists, that matters a lot, because in the case of the removal of Kristina, the bylaws were followed. So it's very easy to fall back on the facts when you have the facts on your side. And when you see the rantings of, Jim Coppus and he literally made up a legal term, Mr. JD, LLM. He made up a legal term and said, I deem that what happened in the past didn't happen and the bylaws are changed from as if they were changed in the past. That's not a thing. And you don't get to make those you have to make those arguments when you don't have the facts on your side. And I think they're coming to the slow realization that they don't.
It's like the old saying, if the facts are on your side, pound the facts. If the law's on your side, pound the law. If neither's on your side, pound the table.
Exactly.
They got nothing to do but pound the table louder. That's all they're going to do in this between this and the 13th.
Quite.
So anyway, we got there's some other decisions coming Kristina's way. You mentioned there's this hearing the 13th. There's the Kent County case. That's the state party case.
Correct.
Melinda Pago suing Kristina Karamo. And then there is also, as you mentioned, the 22nd. That is the Comerica and the trust case. That has a hearing coming up.
Correct.
There is also now an RNC hearing coming up. I'm just kind of disappointed that they didn't get this done already, because I thought they had this meeting this past Wednesday through Friday. The RNC met in Las Vegas, and they did not seat Kristina Karamo. In fact, they have deemed that the chair is vacant in Michigan. Apparently, they're having a hearing coming up. I don't know if anyone else here has any news about this. By the way, George Hiller, we're getting to the FEC filing, buddy. One thing at a time. We can't cover every topic. I know. We got a lot to talk about. But there is, So first of all, does anyone know? And I was not there. Apparently, a lot of folks from Michigan went to this Well, first it was Turning Point USA Big Conference. There's a lot of lobbying going on, and then the RNC had their meeting. So they have a meeting coming up. A lot of speculation about what's going to happen, but I can't imagine the RNC siding with Kristina on this. Honestly, I heard some people saying there's talk that Ron is going to run for governor, and therefore she's going to side with Kristina. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, let's go back to what you were saying, what Matt was bringing up about, and then Adam, you also said about pounding the table. You look at everything that these guys talk about. First of all, there's no actual facts that they present to the table. There's nothing, right? It's all ad hominem. That's all it is. It's all attacks. They make things up as they go along. And if you're wrong, or if they're wrong and you're right, right? If you're right with the facts and you present those to them, they just yell and get louder. And then they throw a Bible verse at you and say, well, God says this or has anointed me with this. I call them the Bible bullies, right? It's the book of the Bible bullies. There's a couple really great chapters in there. Chapter Copus is probably my favorite chapter in that one. It's sad that we're seeing this, right? And all of this could have been prevented. All of this could have been prevented. And Bree, you can back me up, and Andy, you can back me up, and Matt, you can back me up. All of this could have been prevented if in April, when we were in Grand Rapids and the budget committee had talked and spoken with Kristina, and Kristina said, here's the budget. Here's what we have. And then at this point, we wouldn't have any of these lawsuits. We wouldn't be having any of these conversations. We could actually have done our job and actually steered the committee to where it's going to be, right? But here we are. Yeah, John Smith. I love John Smith. But that's where we're at right now. Everybody's going to go ahead and take personality over policy. They love Kristina. Regardless of the rules and bylaws, I've seen so many emails, and everybody on state committee we've received hundreds of emails back and forth. Sometimes I get really, really fun in those emails. But those emails have nothing to do with the rules. It's all conjecture, it's all speculation, it's all emotional-based tirades, and none of it is based and cemented in fact. If we just looked at the facts, the very bylaws. I watched Copus say, well, our policy committee member, Heath Wall, has declared that this is an illegal meeting, and thus it is an illegal meeting. I'm like, is that how we're working now? Well, Andy Seabolt is declaring that this is the official live stream of the Michigan Republican Party. Thus it is. So Congratulations, Adam D'Angeli. You are now the official live stream of the Michigan Party. I mean, that's how these things work, right? That's how we're doing it.
Yeah, it's complete anarchy. It's just whoever, because we're a political party, so therefore the law doesn't apply to anybody. It's just whoever says anything, whatever we say goes. That's just the way it goes, right?
Hey, so
I can say I'm the chair of the Michigan Republican Party, and off we go. Why not?
You could. So Adam, you could actually say that if you're like El Karamo, as long as you engage the emotions of her followers, then you can incite harassment and evoke any rules from everyone that you want to evoke. And they will just follow you, right? Because if you make people believe that they have the power and they're important, well, of course they're going to follow you. If you're telling them that, hey, if you follow me, you're important, then let's follow you. So, hey, go ahead. I support you. Yeah. I support you if you want to run.
I've heard Kristina's people are very mad at me on Telegram or something. So apparently they're complaining about my numbers or some gibberish like that, like living rent free. So I guess I'm doing something right. By the way, on Rumble, Kelly KGOP, whoever that might be, says, no, that was not Jimmy Thomas. That was somebody else. So there we go. Also on Facebook, Adam Armitage says, I watched Steve Kara's live and he claimed that 4 members on January 6th who signed the petition for removal did not pay their dues on time and were therefore not afforded voting rights at that time.
Let's speak to that.
Go ahead.
Go for
you guys
it.
go ahead. I was going to answer that, but you go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I would actually like to speak to that. So I helped do some confirming and make sure that emails and communications were sent back forth. And if somebody's going to make that claim, this is where I ask, they not just believe what El Karamo says, prove it. Prove that those people didn't do it. And when you prove that they didn't, we're going to actually prove that they in fact did because we have it recorded.
And let me add on top of that, Bree. I have, and maybe I'm missing something amongst the millions of emails that we get. Who are those 4 people? I mean, do we have a list of those 4 people? Yeah, I have not seen one. I don't know who they're claiming has done this, but they say there's 4 people.
Facts, John. It's all about facts. They want to say it. Show us the facts.
And, I would just say that we've had some filings go out, and it looks like the MRP, Karamo's former MRP, they put money anywhere they want. They take money out of any account they want for any expenditure. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. I guess if there's 4 people, maybe go and look for 4 different $25 donations somewhere with those names attached. Because John and Bree, both of you know, whenever we ask for anything from Karamo's former administration, what did we ever get? Crickets.
And if there are 4 people, why in the hell is their name still on the state committee list? Son of a gun. Just going to point that out. Why are they still on the state committee list?
I would say also, again, I don't know who those 4 people are. I don't know whether or not they actually paid their dues. I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but I would also point out that unless there's something in the bylaws that makes expulsion self-executing, being late with your dues does not mean you're no longer a member. I mean, that is what would be called a fixable error, or there's some other term the courts have for it. It's an error it's a correctable error. So that doesn't not automatically, unless the bylaws say you are instantaneously expelled if you fail to pay dues by a certain deadline, then that doesn't, unless there's some other process that removes them.
What they do say is that if you don't pay your dues, you can't vote.
And it's supposed to be to a regulated fund. So what if someone donated their $25 membership due, and because the former administration, I don't know if there's a real business administrator among them, if they didn't put it in a regulated fund and they put it in the administrative account, then whose fault would that be? Who knows? And there wouldn't be any proof whether or not someone paid. So get more question marks from El Karamo.
Let's go a step further though, Matt, right? You're the one that just said if they don't pay their votes, they can't vote. Where's the vote if you sign a petition? Where's the vote if you're calling for a special meeting? That's not a vote.
It's not a vote.
So, again, this goes back to show me the names. Show me the names.
Yeah.
And I will say to you,
if you have a case, why not articulate it?
She did this before in a broader audience, and it slapped her right in the face. She was intimately involved with the Royal Oak recount. So this is a nonpartisan election. And she went in and said, I have 25 affidavits from people who have claimed they voted and the voting rolls say they did not. And the clerk's office responded with, we want the names of the 25 people so we can look it up. Mm-hmm. And her response was, I won't give them to you unless you start a police and FBI investigation. And they did exactly that, Adam. They laughed. When you say, who are the people? And they go, we'll tell you later, or, nothing backs it up. Eventually that's the kind of stupid stuff that's occurred. And eventually that has to reach a broader audience, and it doesn't hold any water.
Well, Matt, collecting those membership dues, that's also a form of fundraising, right? But we also know El Karamo was horrible at such a thing.
Well, look, I mean, the reality
throw that out.
The reality is, you're right. Did that go into an admin account, or did that go into a reported account? Because as Dan Lawless just pointed out, at least one of those 4 people, their donation shows up on an FEC registry.
Well,
so
right.
Did you
and
just
that's,
make
I'm
that
just
up?
Going back to, common business administration. It's called open ARs, which maybe no one in the former administration knows what that term is, but it's really simple fundraising. You have 107 people to go and collect a minimum of $25 from. Why didn't they do it? there's easy money to be had right there. And if they're saying that there's some missing, why didn't they go after it?
And if she values the vote of state committee members that represent all of those delegates that she deems as the most important, people in her world to support her, why wouldn't she reach out to those state committee members and say, hey, I see you haven't paid your dues yet, and I value your vote. John Rocha, have you paid your dues? I value your vote. Will you please pay your dues so that we make sure your vote is counted? Because you are going to let down all of these delegates if you haven't paid your dues. So can I bring up something, Adam? I hope this isn't off topic for you, but somebody mentioned something here about an affidavit, right? Was that you, Matt? Somebody said something about an affidavit. I just want to point out, there's been this affidavit that's going around by a member of District 10. His name is Grant Galassa. Now, this isn't private information. This affidavit has been out here. And he goes on with his rant in his affidavit about Warren Carpenter and trying to, getting him to sign that petition. Folks, I just want to let you know, I had all those petitions in my hand. People actually hated me because I wouldn't tell them who signed the petition at that point until they were submitted. Grant Galassa, it's been submitted. Never signed the petition. I don't know what the guy is going off about. Don't know what the intent and purpose of his affidavit was. So let's remember that an affidavit is simply an opinion, a thought, the process that goes through that individual's head, and they put it on a piece of paper, and a notary public simply signs it and says, hey, I confirm that these are your thoughts. So,
man, it seems like the word affidavit has been tossed around in a lot of different cases. Like, hey, I'm signing an affidavit that you can't use proxies. I'm signing an affidavit to do this. I guess affidavit's like the magic legal word. I mean, I'm not a legal scholar, but I guess affidavit's like the cure-all Band-Aid to fix everything. So I'm just going to do affidavits for my taxes. I'm going to do affidavits for everything.
John, I'm going to sign an affidavit that says, I declare that John Rocha is a single guy and he's a Mexican.
Yes.
I'm going to sign that affidavit.
Okay,
At least I haven't caught them yet. I have heard
Just
someone
watch out for
refer to
John
it
Smith.
after
He's
David.
already targeting
Please
you there.
have
He's
that.
rocking you a little.
Yeah, let me give you a little 2 seconds on that, if I may.
Yeah.
Affidavit, it avers to facts. I was in my house on this day when such and such person broke into my house. Those are facts. And it's supposed to be a factual basis for something. You do not provide an affidavit about your opinion. You do not provide your affidavit about your interpretation of a legal document, because that's not what affidavits are for. But we've had that. I deem that it's like the scene from The Office where Steve Carell walks out and says, I declare bankruptcy. And you don't get, it's not how it works. You don't file an affidavit for any of those things. You don't create one. An actual attorneys, whoever drafted, I presume it's got to be JD, LLM to draft that. He's the only person that would do it because he doesn't understand what it's for. But any of us, when we created the affidavit, for example, around state committee members who did not vote for filing the Ingham County lawsuit, it's very simple. I'm a state committee member. We never voted to authorize this. Thank you. That's all you need. And that's all it had. But it's typical nonsense.
Yep. Okay, real quick, I'm going to read a couple of chats now. Go to our next topic. John C. King says, KK has issues with claiming she voted in elections before 2020 when records didn't support that. The problem with this, John, is that when you move, often your voting history does not move with you. So I wouldn't rely on that personally. Michael on YouTube asks, does Pete Hoekstra have to be voted in at official party business at the state convention by delegates? No, that he will simply be the temporary chair of the convention as the current state chair. And is that when the RNC will recognize someone as MIGOP chair? No, hopefully the RNC recognizes somebody before then, but we'll see. Anyway, a couple other things I want to talk about real quick. And then, well, first off, and I think I've touched on this in previous videos, but it really is critical to understand what is coming down the pike, folks. And that is these county conventions and what the Kristina Karamo people have coming for us, because they're not winning in court. They're not winning at the RNC. They are not winning anywhere else. And so their plan now, their last ditch effort. I think if they fail here, they're done. But their next plan is overthrowing the state party at the state convention on March 2nd. And to do that, they need to get people through as delegates to the state convention. Well, normally it's called the state convention. This time it's called the district conventions because the party's too broke to have a state convention. So they're having district conventions instead. But it's weird because they still have to have
actually,
them all
Adam, that's not entirely correct. I had originally set it up to be run in our own districts, not under one roof, but in our own district, because I knew way back in June we wouldn't have the money to do this.
Well,
so just to be fair.
There you go. Anyway, what they're talking about doing, and we have to be clear about this because they're talking about doing actually even more than just reinstalling Kristina Karamo as chair. They're also, by the way, let me show you this video. This is a video posted by Brent R. Brent. I've seen this somewhere else too. It's on Rumble in multiple places. The Kristina people are pushing this around all over the place. The name of the video is "Calling All Delegates. The Time to Resist Tyranny is Now." And in fact, you know what? Let me double check here. I think I may have set this up in such a way that I'm not going to get the audio for it. So let me fix this right now.
Are you going to put us through the torture of seeing Ken Byer on the screen? Because I don't know if I can stomach this right now.
I'm not going to watch the entire thing, but I want to at least talk about what the, what exactly they're saying they're going to do is. So let's just play some parts of it. So there we are. There's Kristina. And here's what they want to do with the county convention. This is step one.
First, we need to find out how many delegate seats are open in our county. Second, we need to recruit God-fearing people for those seats to be elevated as delegates in February. Third, we need to make county slates to attend the March presidential convention to go against the chairs that want to put their people in. Fourth, we need to train these new delegates how to win.
Okay, so that's the first thing to do. Now, the problem with this is there is this little provision in the rules of the convention. And this is the rules that were adopted at the Mackinac Conference State Committee meeting. You can tell this is recent because they say MIGOP in Kristina Karamo fashion, not Michigan Republican Party, because that's what Kristina doesn't see it as a Republican Party she wants to be a part of. It's MIGOP. It's this thing. It's this thing they want to destroy. Anyway, but other than that, this is mostly copy pasted from previous state conventions, which is why there's this little bit on the bottom of page 6 here that has been inherited from state convention rules going back to 1988 that say this. In a county convention, the convention acting as one body shall determine whether to fill precinct delegate vacancies and shall, if it shall so determine, fill such vacancies. In no event shall a precinct delegate vacancy be filled, either on a permanent or temporary basis, until after all voting for district convention delegates or alternates is completely finished. So, if you show up with a mob of people to your county conventions and say we want to elevate them as God-fearing precinct delegates so that they can vote for who goes to state convention, well, the state party rules say you can't. Now, the problem is, as Randy Guppy here says, little thing called rules, little thing doesn't matter to Kristina Karamo's people. Okay? They're going to show up at your county convention and say the rules do not apply. So I urge you guys, tattoo that sentence on your face. Print out copies and put them on every chair that they can't do this because they're going to try to tell you they can. That's their first part of their plan. So
this, by the way, Adam, I'm going to make a reference. Yeah. I hope you understand. You get the reference. This plan is the most closely aligned with the underwear gnomes that I've ever seen. 1, collect underwear. 2, question mark. 3, profit. Okay, what? Yeah. You're gonna recruit delegates when the rules don't allow you to have those delegates vote on an election.
Yeah. Well,
is that
if they have the numbers, Matt, if the precinct delegates showing up to county convention believe these people, they can elect their chair, they can elect their rules, they can amend the agenda. They can do whatever gibberish they want to do.
if
and they
those
could get away with it, folks. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
look,
you might be able to beat them on litigation sometime in the future. Good luck with that.
My recommendation, if there's anyone listening who's a county chair who fears this procedure, I'd like to get used to this term. That is out of order. That is out of order. It's not to be discussed. It's not to be voted on. It is simply out of order. And the Roberts rules are very clear. When there is a provision in the rules or your bylaws to the contrary of Roberts rules, your bylaws and your rules take precedence. The rules of state party for this convention take precedence. It doesn't matter what Roberts rules say about that issue. Any attempt to violate those rules is out of order. Move on.
So, Adam, going back to when these rules were first written, I had a conversation with the former chair and the former general counsel. And I had mentioned, well, we want to make sure with this really having to comport with RNC rules, that we need to ensure that we have the words that no other business shall take place, because there doesn't really need to be. We're going to have plenty of other conventions coming up. We need to keep this really locked down, really solid, really tight. Because if there's anything that in the world that invites litigation, it's going to be who's going to be president of the United States, right? So, so I said, let's go ahead and keep in the wording about no other business shall be conducted. They were against that. Well, yeah, but we might want to have some other things come up like issues. Well, yeah, that or attempting, although it would be out of order, to fill PD vacancies on a permanent basis at the start of the convention rather than the end. The other part of the conversation that I recall was your item number 3 here, make county slates to attend March state convention. I had asked Kristina, and well, I told Kristina and Dan, I said, look, there's a lot of grassroots counties right now. The majority of the party's grassroots at this point in time. And Adam, you remember this. How many conventions did you fight, Adam, where the quote unquote establishment would use slates? And that would always defeat the grassroots, right? Hands down, nearly every time. And I said, Kristina, why are you doing this if you're saying you're grassroots? You know none of the grassroots wants a slate. She said, well, yeah, but maybe for this one, let's just go ahead and leave it up to the counties. But really, if they're grassroots, Kristina, they won't want it. Yeah, but let's go ahead and keep it in there anyways. Yeah, depending on your counties, folks. But if they're talking about doing slates, you want to talk to your precinct delegates and be like, here's why slates are horrible. Because you want to have a vote on every single person. Now, in my county, by the way, for a long time, we've done it with no slates. It's top vote getters get to go. That's how we've always done it. It's the fairest, isn't it? Yeah. Although even still, you're still competing. You know, you still have to get more votes than the other candidates. Yep. But
I do want to bring up something. I think
is you got to educate people in your counties. Like there's precinct delegates who you probably haven't seen since the convention 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And you got to let them know what the heck's going on and see where they're at on this stuff and figure out, you know, how you can make sure you guys get the number of votes you need to get the right folks to state convention. And also, by the way, let me see if it's on this video. I think it is. Maybe it's not. There's a lot of rhetoric from Ken Byer about overthrowing your county chair at the convention too. So, I mean, the first thing to tell people is you don't want any monkey business at your county convention. That's what they're coming to do. They are Marxists. They're coming to overthrow your county convention, to overthrow your county GOP, basically.
I mean,
I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
You know, in many counties, they have rules about doing that. If the rules provide for a procedure to remove an executive officer, you can't change those rules at convention, right? Overthrowing county chair, out of order. Correct, Jay. Well done. Today's gold star goes to Jay for remembering this is out of order. This is out of order. This is out of order. This is out of order.
But if they elect a permanent chair, and he's one of their people, then rule it in order.
Well, but hold on. So Matt,
Sure.
So the convention chair, though, is separate from your executive committee chair. So right at the start of your county convention meeting, you're going to have your county executive chair is actually your temporary county convention chair. So you can choose at that time to nominate somebody else for the county convention chair that would be voted in over your county executive chair. So if your county has concerns, well, then potentially consider who else would be a good county convention chair to make sure that that meeting maintains in order status and doesn't fall out of order.
And I would highly recommend approving the rules and the agenda before you approve the appointment of the permanent chair.
Yep. Anyway, I want to move on a little bit because we still have a lot to talk about tonight, but we've got this other thing that they want to do. So step one is getting the delegates to the state convention or the district convention. So then this is funny, they call it state convention of delegates, even though it's not a state convention. It's a district conventions, but whatever. So here's what they say to do. Decide the real chairperson and executive committee members. That means reinstall Kristina and expelling people who voted against her, folks. That's what that means. And then here we go. Here's the rest, by the way.
And who the executive committee will be. It is their voice that needs to be heard. Second, we're going to pass a resolution that is going to close our primaries and open it up to delegates.
Okay, let's pause it here because
Wow.
that's kind of a big thing too.
God, what did?
Let's explain to folks what exactly this means. And I know we've covered this on this channel before, but see, this is misleading language because when you say close the public primary vote, it's easy for someone to think, well, you mean let's have partisan voter registration and only Republicans can vote in the Republican primary. No, that's not what they're talking about. They were talking about eliminating the primary and having precinct delegates at county conventions elect local Republican nominees and state conventions and district caucuses for nominating for everybody else. That's what that means. I mean, imagine if you're going knocking on doors, you're a precinct delegate, you're talking to voters. Hey, how you doing, Mr. Smith? Well, I just want you to know that our state committee has passed a new resolution, and I know you always vote in the Republican primaries for who, in your judgment's the best candidate for state representative, for county commissioner, for state senate, for U.S. Senate. But we got together and realized a lot of you voters are ignorant rhinos, and we actually know better. So from now on, we're going to be the ones that decide who your nominees are. How do you like that, Mr. Smith? Chances are, you might not get punched in the face, but you're going to probably lose Mr. Smith's vote in November. Probably.
So, Adam, I need to point out right here, this is not only misleading, but this is extremely misleading, right? And people that don't recognize this, like, I wanted to write this in a letter and I probably shouldn't write it, but this is like a big berry turd salad parfait. That this is like the turd that they convince you is actually a chocolate covered strawberry. So there is nothing that is even accurate about this. To close the public primary vote, right? So they're stealing your votes, but to open it to the delegates, like, let's also consider delegates actually get to have a voice in the primary vote. But the bottom line is, even take this, like locally, take this to your local county officials. Maybe some of those officials have even been attacked by some of these feral cat grassroots, right? And your county clerk has been attacked. Your sheriff has been attacked. Rhinos, per se, have been attacked. The establishment have been attacked. And these are all elected county officials. And county officials are like, oh, I'm not going to get involved in my local party. Well, guess what, county officials? If you don't get involved and you don't show up to your county conventions and vote to prevent these grassroots of Karamo from going, you're not going to make it onto the ballot. Do you know why? Because these people loathe you and they despise you and they don't see anything good about you. So this is a wake-up call to our county elected officials. No matter what you've done.
Hold on, I'm going to read a couple of chats real quick. Todd Gilman says, Lenawee County will be lucky to fill its allotments of seats at the district convention. Todd, that's a challenge to you, buddy, to bring people to that county convention. Because if there's vacancies available, you fill them, and don't for a second believe that Karamo's people are not going to have folks there. And the way it works, guys, is the delegate spots, precinct delegates get preference over non-precinct delegates. So recruit precinct delegates so you got the numbers you need to fill all those seats. And then for the alternates, which for those who don't know, you elect an equal number of alternates as delegates. Precinct delegates do not get the preference in alternates. Todd, contact me. I got a list of Trump donors in your county. They can be alternates. Contact them. Get them there.
Well, Adam, that's the important point you want to. There's a couple things you want to point out just on the rules side. Okay. Go in the Wayback Machine. There were some people who said that we should have a state convention. And the idea was quashed in favor of 13 simultaneous district conventions. And that was quashed because the previous chair thought that she was going to get thrown out at that convention. So she didn't want to do it. And guess what? The district conventions all have a mandatory set of rules. And rule number 3 is the items that may be covered at district convention. And they don't include either of those things. So by her own rulemaking, she precluded this plan. So, I think Ken Byer talks to her. Might want to just refer to the rules. That's the last page. It's Exhibit A to the state thing. And it says, this is Rule 3. This is what you're going to do.
The duly elected delegates shall caucus for the following purpose: to elect an RNC committee man and woman, to vote for the Republican nominee, to elect 3 delegates and alternates to the RNC. And what you don't see, right? What you don't see is the one that they talk about the chair. In their business.
Well, and Matt, even where like that number 1 there, where that says reconfirming the chair or however it was worded in there, you guys, you also have to remember that once the chair is removed, which she has been, and I'm going to hope that this is actually brought forward and determined before the convention takes place on the 2nd. But once the chair is removed, they may not be a member of state committee again for that term. She's done. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if 100% of the convention floor at that time wants the chairperson to be reinstated. You cannot do that. And don't tell me we're just going to throw these laws to the side, especially when we are the party that's trying to go after election integrity, right? Like election integrity that says we don't follow policies and procedures because they don't work for us. We follow law. We're going to follow the law. We're going to follow the bylaws.
Yeah.
I laughed on the
4 chats here, and then I want to move on because we are going to be here all night soon if we don't. Because we got some numbers to look at too. But Bill Hamilton asks, wouldn't it require the state legislature to change the law to allow the party to close its primary? Maybe, but there might be a First Amendment issue.
That question,
so it's not entirely certain.
The answer to that question, Adam, is yes. Yes, it does. There is no way.
Holly Valade says, talk about the Good Old Boys Network to a new level, taking the Good Old Boys Network to a new level. No grassroots candidate will ever get elected unless they're in good with the right delegates. What happens when the establishment takes back your county? Folks, what happens when Democrats run as PDs in the Republican Party, by the way?
Right there, Adam, you just nailed it.
Democrat areas, that'd be really, really, really easy. Yep.
But Adam, hold on, you just nailed it. And I know you want to go on. But the same way that we don't have to register to vote in the primaries as Republicans, you do not have to register as a Republican to file to run as a Republican precinct delegate. A Democrat, it's completely open for them to run. As a Republican precinct delegate, they check the box and they're in.
So I have a different opinion on this before you keep going. I think this is a great idea because instead of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in a state rep, I only have to spend it on a couple of vacations for some delegates, and then boom, you're elected. I mean, it's a beautiful system. It works out
Yeah.
great. I don't have to spend a ton of money. We're just all going to go to Hawaii and have a great time, and boom, I'm going to get elected. That's how it works.
John, sign up to be a cabana
To
boy.
decide who's going to represent them in the Republican
To the point.
general election.
Because this goes right to it.
And we're going to pass bylaws at that convention that make sure that the establishment will never regain control of the Republican Party.
And how do you do that exactly without becoming the establishment yourself?
This is like
Elitist fuck.
idiots.
Is the establishment the voter of
Yeah.
the voters of Michigan?
Adam,
Yeah,
this number 3 is this closed system, right?
Yeah,
Centralization.
the way they're going to do this is
of power.
ending elections altogether. That's what it could only mean.
Well, and they're trying to create this closed system with this centralization, this authoritarian power. So what happens if you take the same system and they think that they're grassroots and they're all in here, but all of a sudden Democrats sink in as the Republican precinct delegates, and then Democrats take over this closed system? Because in their system, if I'm the chair and I say the sky is gray, and Adam, you argue me and say, actually, Bree, I think the sky is blue and the clouds are gray, I'm going to say, Adam, off with your head, you're out. This is so dangerous.
Well, all I have to say is what you want me to say, and then I'm in your good graces, and now I'm in the state central committee. And when you do that, I mean, this is a circus, folks. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about basically saying, well, because we're a party, we can do whatever we want. The laws don't apply to us. We can eliminate any minimal semblance of democratic rule, like, electing precinct delegates. We can say you're not a precinct delegate. We can say you're a heretic. We can kick you out and simply run our own completely closed organization. That's what these people are going for, folks. That's what's on the line on March 2nd. And really what's going to come down to is what the results are a week from Thursday. That's what these fanatics are trying to do, folks. That's how serious this is. So you better take this as seriously as a heart attack, because they're coming. And if they got the numbers, they're going to do it. So with that, the other big thing that happened this week is there were some very critical campaign finance deadlines that happened on January 31st. And it took them a few days. They came in 3 days late, but the Michigan Republican Party did finally file their FEC campaign finance reports. Now, the Michigan Republican Party has actually 3 accounts. They have a federal campaign account, a state campaign account, and an administrative account. One of them is the federal account. Now, you may recall this letter that was sent not long ago from the National Republican Congressional Committee, concerned about the state of the $263,000 that they gave to Kristina Karamo's MIGOP. And so, putting this on the record, the attorney for the NRCC writes, Mr. Hartman, thank you for confirming receipt of $263,000 in federal funds from Protect the House 2024 to the Michigan Republican Party State Central Committee federal account. I appreciate you directing your client to hold on to the funds while I request the opportunity to appear in front of MIGOP's budget subcommittee to make our case. Surely, as general counsel for the MIGOP, you of all people understand that it defies logic to use these limited federal funds for exorbitant speakers' fees and plush conferences when such expenses can be legally paid for with state funds in a state that allows unlimited individual and in some cases corporate contributions. That was the NRCC putting themselves on the record and documenting that Dan Hartman told them that we're going to hold on to those $263,000 while we arrange for you to come to us and make the case to our budget subcommittee why we shouldn't just steal this money from you and squander it on our own purposes. Unfortunately, the results have come in, and here is the Michigan Republican Party's FEC filing for this year. Coverage dates are January 1st to December 31st, 2023. Total receipts, almost $1 million. Wow. And but total spent $2.6 million, including some kind of transfer seems to have occurred here. Transfers to affiliated committees. What were those? That was to transfer down to the state. No federal activity. $1.961 $1.97 million plus $25,000 transferred down to the state level from the federal account, leaving the federal account with only $246,000 on hand minus $184,000 in loans. So, Aaron Clark, NRCC, I am sorry, but it appears that Jen Hartman has reneged on that promise to hold that money until you had a chance to appear before their budget committee. That money appears to have disappeared from their federal accounts. You guys make of this, huh?
I could have told him that.
Yeah, I know. Shock among shocks.
So could have
No.
county commissioners and a circuit court judge up in Charlevoix County about 10 years ago.
Say that again?
I said, could a couple county commissioners and a judge up in Charlevoix County about 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Wow. Daniel Lawless says, Mackinac was paid for via the federal account. Is that what all this other spending was? I was wondering about this stuff. Like, what? Because certainly they're not giving this money to actual congressional candidates, but that $500,000 in operating expenditures, they blew all that money too. Yeah, parking and pizza paid for with the federal account. There you go, folks. So there. Now, that, of course, leaves open the other question, which is, how much money does their state account have? We have this document here showing, fortunately, this document has been received. It was the document period covering December 2022 through December 2023. The statement was due on January 31st and was received on January 29th of this year. So good for them, filing it 3 days early. Oh, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. That was the Democrat Party that filed it on time. That document actually shows the Democrats have received how many contributions? A couple $100,000 here and there. Gretchen Whitmer for governor. Ted Dintersmith gave him $75,000. Joe Tate $50,000. State Democracy Defenders PAC $75,000. You want to give your state party money because they get better postage rates than other people do. So good for the Democrats for richly funding their state party. How are the Republicans doing? Here we go. This is the Michigan Republican Party. There's a committee phone number that's no longer valid. There's the date the committee was formed in 1977. There's the P.O. box at the UPS store where their mailing address is. There's Jennifer Standerfer's address and phone number. She's their treasurer. And, oh, they haven't filed. Well, that's not good. I heard Jennifer, by the way, Matt, you're muted.
I wanted to point out one thing, Adam, that there. As Dan Lawless pointed out, Mackinac was paid through the federal account. Okay. Now, he's not here. He's been on the show before. Warren Carpenter. On behalf of Warren Carpenter, we're going to do a big I told you so. Mackinac was paying through the federal account. As the letter that you just had up indicates, which is correct, donations to a federal account are limited to $10,000. To the state account, they are not, and to the state admin, they're private. Okay. Mackinac was paid through the federal account. Mackinac included the speaker, Jim Caviezel, who was paid $110,000 to speak. That was paid for by a loan from Jim Coppas's wife. On multiple calls, Jim Coppas, who claims he was the one that funded it, not his wife, which is a different violation, he and Dan Hartman agreed to each be responsible for half if the money couldn't be raised. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, Kristina was at an event and declared what? That Jim Coppas's wife had been repaid. That debt had been repaid. Oh. Do you see that anywhere in the federal filing? Because I don't.
Interesting.
It's so weird. It's almost like it's not there. You know what else what else is in the federal filing? The federal filing includes a very small payment to the if you go to the disbursements page, I think it's itemized disbursements, and then you click on it says for all line numbers, And what we used to do in the business is you'd look for like big numbers, right? So you see like
Hey,
$82,000.
What am I doing here? See these three? It looks like these three things. There's this $195,000. That one maybe.
Well, let's see. Let me see which one you're looking at. Nope. Yeah, and you got to go through and you can see all those, right? Okay. Now,
there's Kristina's paycheck. Good for her.
Yep.
With
And
enlarged
payroll
Freon Solutions.
and so on and so forth. And if you go all the way down to, it's a payment on December 7th to Huntington Place. If this is done by date, you go all the way. Yep, there you go. Actually, we're going to do the other way because it's.
Oh yeah, other way. Right.
So.
Oh, this. Actually, this thing is. This might be a web issue.
Different pages. You got to go show all. There's a way to do it. I mean, I got it in mind, but anyway, on there's a payment to Huntington Place for state convention of $3,300.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, we were told that the candidates, all this Huntington Place was paid for by all the candidates that now have dropped out. Vivek and Ron DeSantis and all these other people who were going to attend, they were all going to pay $20,000 a piece, and that's been paid. Where's that? Not there. Now, is there an explanation? Maybe, but I tend to believe that I don't think that the budget committee has been given an explanation on either of those. And on the Mackinac one about the payment to Jim Caviezel, there's no way around it. By filing this through your federal account, you are limited to $10,000. A forgiven loan is a donation. That's an FEC violation. That's Warren exactly wrote it.
Excuse me briefly, Matt. Keep on talking. I'll be right back.
Okay. So, I mean, that was something that was pretty damning, because if they had elected to do it properly, as most of the time it's been done, this was given to me actually by the treasurer of the Washtenaw County Republican Party, said, this is always done through the admin account, which allows you to collect money in different ways, pay it in different ways, and most of it's not reported. If you make a profit, you can't use that money for candidates, but the point wasn't the profit. The point was what it did. And we elected not to do that. We elected just to keep it in our, for some reason, federal account, which no one can explain. And because of that, there is a very obvious campaign finance violation that someone's going to have to explain.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
So just because you're very knowledgeable with this, so Todd Gilman's on here, right? And we know he's one of our budget state committee members. So the Huntington payment was a down payment. So if we read everything correctly, there was $3,000. Is that correct? That was put down in Huntington Place.
Yes.
So that was a down payment, which personally in my mind, that was a really small down payment to what I can imagine it actually costs to have those 13 separate rooms for our 13 separate conventions. Todd, if you're on here and you're still listening, do we have anything in the budget to what was actually confirmed to what the full amount would be for Huntington Place? And do we know, did the candidates, particularly those that have retracted from the presidential primary, have those candidates all already paid? Or was that just what they were supposed to pay? Is that documented?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that would be otherwise. And that was, again, this is simple stuff. Like, we are wasting an inordinate amount of time going back through. This is like, balancing the checkbook of a forgetful person. Like, it was going to be $30,000. I thought they said they were going to raise $20,000 a candidate or something like that. And then everybody who was out that had been paid, but it's just not the case. So again, this is just, and when you talk about all the things that are going wrong, why can't our financial filings be like a piece of cake? There's not much there. It's not like we're raising millions of dollars. There's not anything there.
Todd says they paid per Jennifer. I've heard rumors that Jennifer Standerfer is no longer the treasurer. Do you guys know anything about that? I've only heard. I can't confirm. I've only heard that.
I've only heard those rumors too. But Adam, so if Jennifer said they were paid, but if these came from right presidential candidates, Matt, this is where I'm not fully aware in this, wouldn't that go to the federal account? And wouldn't that be in the FEC filing? If that was in fact paid by presidential candidates, that would go to the federal account, and that would have been reflected in any of the FEC filings, right?
You would
Isn't that the only place they can go is to the federal account if it comes from a presidential candidate?
They elected to put it in the state admin account. They could have done it that way. But again, we have people that we know that are on the budget committee. These are kind of budget questions. Where is this going? Who is it going? Where? Someone should in the network should have an answer to these. And that's goes back to my fundamental problem here is that we are, the former chair is surrounded by people, a very, very small group of people who don't trust anybody else, who don't think anybody else should have any say what goes on. And so it's reflective of kind of a failed political campaign and not the way you run an effective organization. That's been my complaint for a while.
So
yeah, one thing,
Adam,
go ahead, John.
If you could pull up that FEC page real quick, I wanted to take note of something. I just wanted to see where the money was spent for get out the vote, or text messaging, or for candidates, or for mailers. Is there any of that stuff in there that is actually electing Republicans or helping Republicans? And I'm just curious. I missed it. I was looking.
Usually, what you do is you collect money during those off years and you sit on it, and that way you can spend it in election season in the big years like this current one. Unfortunately, the beginning cash on hand for this year for the federal campaign committee was almost $2 million. Now it's down to less than $250,000. And maybe they transfer that all into these other. See, the thing about it is, and Matt touched on this, is that the campaign accounts are highly regulated, whereas the admin account is not regulated. But the catch is the admin account, you can't spend money on campaigns. You can only spend it on stuff like, office rent and stuff like that. Stuff that's not directly connected to a campaign. So you're taking money that was hard to get because of how regulated it was and putting it into an account that is typically where you deposit the funds that you can most easily get because you don't have to disclose things. Like donors don't like to disclose who they are if they can help it. Well, to donate to a campaign, you have to. But to donate to an administrative account, you don't have to. So you might get some money from someone that wants to remain anonymous, where there's no campaign finance limit. You put all that money in the admin account, use that to pay for your office rent, for your internet, for your festival or whatever you want to do, your convention maybe, although that might arguably be a campaign matter anyway, so maybe you can't do that. But the point being, it'd be totally insane to take money from your campaign account and put it into your admin account, because the reason why you have the admin account is because that's where you can do things you can't do with a campaign account. So that's what they've done.
Can I ask a question? So which account would it come from if the MRP were spending money, let's say, to create videos about revoking the primary voters' right, and to have these beautiful videos that go out that the MRP is sending to everybody? Somebody had to create those videos, and I would imagine they probably weren't free. Which account would that money come from?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I would imagine you could probably get away with that.
If they're creating videos, right? Where would that money come from? Like, that would be spent on creating videos. Would that be admin?
Generally it would be admin, right? That's an administrative thing. That's not particularly in favor of one candidate or another. Yeah. There's two issues, right? We have a budget committee. The budget committee approves expenditures, all matters related thereto. Okay, that's just how it works. And we got very, very early on in this administration, and they said, we're not adhering to that rule. We'll spend money how we see fit, and we'll come get you when we think we need you. And that's just not how it works. So the bigger issue is, I mean, if you go through what's been filed, and you do a look and say, hey, this is what we did with the money. It's pretty awful. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's, look, you can do what you want, right? But that's other people's money. Donors have given you that money. State committee members have given you that money. You don't just get to spend it the way you want because you heard from somebody that that's something you could do.
So potentially donors' money, if they're paying for these videos to be produced that are encouraging our votes to be taken away from the primary voters, like potentially, think about this, donors could have paid for the videos that promote their vote to be robbed and revoked from them.
Correct.
Oh yeah. There was let me go back to this letter real quick from the National Republican Congressional Committee, which makes this point down here. It is important to keep in mind that the donors whose federal funds you hold gave to an entity called Protect the House. Their expectation was that those federal funds would be used to protect Republicans' majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. And as donor-driven organizations, we must always strive, first and foremost, to be good stewards of their funds. If donors do not think that their federal funds are being well managed by the MIGOP, it certainly is possible that the state party will be excluded from their generosity in the future. And by the way, John King asks, KK was paid out of the administrative account? She should have been, but apparently, according to the FEC report we just looked at, she was paid out of the federal account. Strangely. So yes, she has been paid from federal donors' money that was donated to retake the House. That's what their federal donation dollars went to. I wonder if any national Republican organization is going to keep giving Kristina Karamo their money.
I mean, she's taken the House, though, right? Like, she's taken the House because she's going to determine who goes in the House. So, right? I mean, like, she could.
Oh, she said, yeah, we're not going to support
win the House. Yeah, it's all on her. She's going to win it.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, we got a couple more.
Remember,
go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, remember, we don't want big donors, but big donors aren't donating to us. So why aren't big donors donating to us? But we don't want their money, but give us our money. It blows my mind, these people. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, there are some other FEC reports I want to check out real quick, just because we have them. And in fact, I'm looking at the agenda items on my show tonight and realizing we're probably not going to talk about Biden much tonight, or about Biden's foreign policy failures, or maybe even the thought crimes thing. I might do a stream during the week to talk about the thought crimes bills, but I do not want to end this stream before we've looked at the other financial filings that have come out over the past few days, and that is the U.S. Senate campaigns. A lot of candidates for U.S. Senate in Michigan. We're going to go through and see what their numbers are now that they are out. First, of course, we have the American traitor, Peter Meyer, the man who voted for Trump's false impeachment and has lied about him ever since. For engineering for his role in that coup, he has collected a lovely $508,000 and has spent only $100,000. He has $389,000 cash on hand. There is Peter Meyer for you. Next up, we have another swamp creature. We have Mike Rogers, who did not vote to impeach Trump, but probably only because he was not in the legislature at the time. He was the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, one of the guys Trump was considering to be director of the FBI. And Trump decided that he was actually worse than Christopher Wray. But he is clearly the pick. He's been endorsed by the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and they have funneled $1.8 million to his war chest, of which a lot of that's been spent already. Spent nearly $1 million, presumably on a lot of campaign communications. I know I've already gotten a bunch of junk from him. As John Smith says, FBI and CNN employee Mike Rogers. And he is left with just under $1 million cash on hand. So those are the two probably biggest fundraisers from the establishment for the U.S. Senate seat. If Mike Rogers is the nominee and Alyssa Slotkin, we will literally have a choice between the FBI and the CIA for a U.S. Senate seat, folks, in November. That's how terrible this is. But there are other choices. Let's see how there's that lovely police chief, James Craig, kind of dropped the ball in his governor race, didn't turn in valid signatures, but only $60,000 in total receipts. And he spent half of that. So he only has just under $28,000 to the penny on hand. Wow. People have told me James Craig's been at the bar. They weren't kidding. That is a campaign that's got nothing to show for itself. Sad. Next, we have Michael Hoover. Great guy. I signed his nominating petition. He came to speak to our county committee meeting. Big Ron Paul type, talked about the Federal Reserve, clearly one of us. And a respectable, but not even in the galaxy of those other two, maybe not quite, but $213,000 on hand, of which almost all of that was given by himself. So he's raised, looks like, about $22,000, which is not impressive, folks, by the way. I mean, if you call everybody you know, if you really call everybody you know and ask for the max, you'll probably raise 50 grand. Hoover has only raised $2,200 outside of his own bank account, spent most of that, and maybe not most of it, spent $88,000. So he's got $124,000 on hand, but owes himself back $190,000. So his campaign is in the red. That's Michael Hoover's campaign. Still wish him the best, but not looking good financially. Now we have Sherry O'Donnell. She has raised $158,000, although $92,000 of that is a loan. Loan not from the candidate, which seems odd. I don't know who else would have loaned her that money, or who else could loan her that money. But whatever, she has raised $63,000 in individual contributions, spent $65,000, and has $93,000 on hand, just over the $92,000 she owes to someone. Not sure who that is. Strangely, if you click on the link, it doesn't say. It doesn't work. I went to click the link and it just says zero. No data available. Don't know what that's about, but there you go, folks. So that's Sherry O'Donnell. And again, way below Mike Rogers, who now clearly is the guy to beat here. But we have others. There are a lot of candidates for U.S. Senate. We have this guy, Glenn Wilson, who I just met the other day. I think he just recently announced he maybe didn't have to file. I hope he didn't have to file, because he didn't file. No data for him. Don't know. He has told me he can be financially competitive, but so has every other politician I've ever met in my life. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. There's also another Wilson in the race. I hope they don't have a problem with the competing yard signs, but probably not, because J.D. Wilson only raised $7,000, did not put in any of his own money, spent $6,000 of that, and is left with only $1,000 on hand. So there you go. There's that. And then there's this guy, Sandy Penciller, who has put in $1 million of his own money, spent almost none of it, spent just over $45,000, and has $1 million in the bank. So there you go, folks. That is the U.S. Senate race in a nutshell right there. On the Republican side, there are exactly 3 candidates who I would call financially competitive: Mike Rogers, Sandy Penciller, and Peter Meyer. This is a no-brainer, folks. This is a no-brainer. Just saying. But panel, if you guys want to weigh in, if your thoughts on all this, those are the numbers that we just got to see for the first time. Oh, Patty P says,
well,
what about Nikki Snyder? Great question. I forgot about her. Let me go look.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Friends of Nikki Snyder. Here we go. Let me pull up Nikki Snyder. Apologies to Nikki Snyder. I did not mean to neglect her. She has total receipts of just under $200,000, including 26 of her own, raised 133, spent 106, and has 93,000 on hand, minus 26 that she might repay to herself. So I would put her in the Michael Hoover, Sherry O'Donnell category. Not broke, but nowhere near the others, in my humble opinion.
Well, you might want to point out how much money some competitive Senate races have drawn in the last cycle. And I want to say it's in the 20 to 30. I think Pennsylvania was higher. I think Fetterman was closer to 50.
Tens of millions. But that's in the general. I mean, that's the primary is a different ballgame.
True.
And at that point, the only money you need to raise is more than your opponent. And not necessarily. And John Smith says, I was told this is America, only rich people win U.S. Senate seats. Well, I mean, there has to be some selection process. Why don't I run for U.S. Senate? Well, because I can't raise any money, for one thing. Not that kind of money, at least. You can't have a million different candidates. There is a process. And the fact is, if you want to get 1 million people to vote for you in the primary or however many you need, you got to be able to reach people. That takes money, folks. Where do you get the money from? I mean, people are talking public financing of elections. Is that ethical? Is it ethical to take money from taxpayers who might not like any of the candidates and use their hard-earned money to run your campaign? That's what Bernie Sanders wants to do. That's what a lot of the Democrats want to do. I don't think that is ethical. Now, I've seen candidates win that have been outspent 2-1, 3-1, 5-1 even. If you can reach a certain baseline, maybe you can. But Michigan's a state of 10 million people. There's a lot of media markets. It takes money. Yeah, I remember. It takes money. Sorry, it does. And if you can't run for U.S. Senate, run for something lower. Maybe in the future you can raise money. But same thing with the state party. What business do you have being the state chair if you can't raise millions of dollars? That's kind of what the job is. You know? Sorry. It's the way the world works.
There's a candidate for a local office who laid out his fundraising team, and it had, 15 max out donors or 17 max out donors. It's better.
Matt, you'll appreciate this one because you're a school board man, right? Like we have that in common. El Karamo should really look into her local school board races to see if there's any elections that will be upcoming, because she should absolutely run to get on a local school board.
She would. I mean, that
would be amazing.
One of the problems that we have is we have this delusion that Adam is referring to, and that is all I need to do to win an election is espouse the right policy principles, and I'll win the election. And that's simply not how it works. And the reason why we as Republicans struggle with this is because of Donald J. Trump. And I would tell my school board candidates when I did this last cycle, I would say, stop, because Donald Trump has 2 things you don't have. Number 1, he's a billionaire. You're not. Number 2, he has almost universal name recognition already. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. You can't walk in.
He was the face of the super rich.
Yeah, who's Donald Trump? No one says, I don't know. And that includes people who, just illegally cross the border, right? I mean, everybody knows who this guy is. So that doesn't exist. You cannot win a campaign by trying to be Donald Trump without those 2 characteristics. So there's a lot of people that thought that. Like, all I have to do is say the right things. That's the whole point of this closed primary. Just say the right things and you'll win. The problem is you're not that person. You got to bring in donors, and you have to be able to do the hard work about running an actual nuts and bolts of a campaign, which there are some people locally that are doing a good job of it. Myself and the Wayne Six, your common co-host, Patty P, does this a lot. She's always out there working on a campaign because that's what we're supposed to do. It's not just I say the right things, magically I win an election. That doesn't happen. I call it the Sir Galahad theory of politics. Our cause is just, therefore we will prevail. Like, as if every voter looks up all the candidates, looks up what both sides are saying, makes an informed decision. And the reality, folks, is, hey, if that was the way things worked, explain Prop 2, explain Prop 3. No,
right.
They show up, they hear what they're told, they vote by their feels, and that's it. And maybe they know someone who tells them how to vote. And if there is a community organizer doing that, maybe you, precinct leader, maybe that'll influence their vote. No, absent that, they do what the media says, or they do what they see at the last minute, or they don't vote in that local race at all. They might vote for president, and that's it. But Yeah, that's the way it goes. On Rumble, Uber Lover says, thank God there are some moral rich people. Not nearly enough, in my humble opinion. And rich people tend to be bad, but this is the nature of the world, folks. Life ain't fair. Hate to tell you. But, write that down. Life isn't fair. And, I remember in the New Hampshire primary, there is this place called Dixville Notch in New Hampshire. They vote at midnight in New Hampshire because there's only 6 registered voters in this place. I know Dixville Notch very well. I used to go there when I was a kid every summer. My grandmother loved to go there. She would take me and my sister and my mother there every summer. And it's this resort hotel, which is now out of business. It's now being renovated, I guess, maybe. So the 6 votes in New Hampshire, Dixville Notch, were all for Nikki Haley. You know who they were? The hotel's billionaire developers. I'm sorry, that's unfortunately the way most rich people are. They're people that read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and think they're the smartest people in the world, and they mind their own financial affairs, and they don't pay attention to they don't get Donald Trump. They're not like Donald Trump. He's not one of them. That's the way it is. Sorry, guys. Try to get more rich people to run. Most of them won't do it. You know why? Because they got better things to do with their lives. Life sucks. That's the way it is. Sorry. All right. Anything else? Kelly KGOP on Rumble says the 120 grand was on there from the presidential candidates. That's the FEC report she must have been referring to.
Then there you have it. So the presidential candidates paid Huntington directly. Okay.
Yeah.
But why are we paying Huntington through our Fed account and not our admin account?
Yep. Sully on Rumble says, as of tonight, Marquette does not have a county chair. It is chaos here. What does this portend for state convention? I don't know, Sully. You can try to reach out to us, and maybe we know some attorney that can look at this. Maybe I don't know what the story is in Marquette, honestly, or what you do. Look at your bylaws. Maybe I don't know what to tell you. But there you go. You might have a real problem getting some state delegates seated. John King says the AFL-CIO is an arm of the Democrat Party. That is correct. Paula Necki says KK has said that Huntington Place is only costing the MIGOP $30,000. Well, if KK said it, it must be true.
So then what happened to the $20,000 per candidate that they were charging, that they swore they had gotten in already? At the time she said that, I think there were either 5 or 7 candidates. What happened to that money then?
Yeah, amazing. All right, guys. It's getting late. It's 10:30. We will maybe do a follow-up stream during the week to talk about some of the actual national news I've been ignoring for the past month or so on the stream. Talking about Biden, talking about, the news of the day, Ukraine, Israel. Some things have happened in the Middle East recently. I don't know if you've heard about those.
Your Trump lead was great. I was ready to chime in. I've been in that field for 25 years. If every time somebody overstated their net worth on their financial statement, I get $1, I would not be on. I'd be on this live stream from my yacht, because every single time, and it's never in every state's law, it says the same thing. You have to have somebody who loses something. All of his loans were paid back, which is actually really, really good, by the way. Earlier in his lifetime, that wasn't always the case, but in later years, he's made sort of better business decisions, and all these things were always paid back, and there's no loss. And this judge in New York, and understand in New York, the nomenclature is reversed as it is in Michigan. The entry level court in New York is called Supreme Court. So their Court of Appeals is their final court. But so this judge, who is again a local yokel, elected locally, I'm sure all Democrat, I'm sure 98% of the vote, doesn't understand that basic concept. This is going to get appealed, and it's going to be overturned in 30 seconds.
Well, you'd hope so. But, first off, the thing is, we have these institutions that are supposed to be safeguarding against things that are going wrong. Like the trial court judge is supposed to have not allowed these crazy people onto the juries, for example. Same thing in New York, but they did all this stuff. And this is going to a really, really dangerous place, folks. I saw the story the other day. In fact, I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. This is a story Man allegedly posed as a minor online to meet a child sex predator who he then fatally shot. Charged with murder in connection with the death of Sean Connery Showers. Funny name for a child molester, age 37. And here's the guy who is now in custody, accused of posing as a minor to lure this guy. So police alleged Spencer admitted to killing Showers in May of 2023. Showers pleaded guilty to possession of child sex abuse material in 2009. He's been charged with murder, and here's what the story is. He says basically that he went after this guy just because the police wouldn't do it. Regardless of the likability of the victim, we're a nation of laws, says the prosecutor. No one gets to be judge, jury, and executioner depending on how they feel. And I don't know if this particular story says it. I don't think it does, but some other story I saw about the same issue quoted the guy as basically saying if the cops won't bring these people to justice, someone else has to. And here's the reality, folks. When the legal system is the thing that has replaced dueling in this country because it gives us a venue where we can resolve our disputes with some expectation of justice. When the left destroys the institutions of our country, this is where we get to. We get to lawlessness. We get to anarchy. We get to people who have to hunt down child molesters and kill them personally because the state won't put them away. That's the society the left is taking us into. And every time we have these insane judges putting out these insane court cases where maybe, see, George Hiller says hero. People are gonna think that. And not entirely wrongly, although other people would say, as this prosecutor says, the people don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner. But the problem is the judges and juries ain't doing their jobs anymore. And that's where we're going in this country. It's extremely dangerous. And I don't have much confidence. Unfortunately, I mean, maybe this gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, but they're going to get overwhelmed because this is coming from everywhere. How many cases can the U.S. Supreme Court overturn? Because the New York Court of Appeals, are they going to be less crazy than the trial court in the state of New York? About Massachusetts, it's going to be the rule that there's just no rule of law for conservatives anymore. You can't get judges in a liberal state. Will that happen in Michigan? I'm sorry.
The only thing he did wrong. That's all right. The only thing he did wrong here was he didn't join the FBI prior because we know the FBI can lure falsehoods and bring people in and then do whatever they want and not get convicted at all and just be let off the hook. So that's his only downfalls. He didn't join the FBI like our friend CJ is. So that's our only.
Yeah, but the FBI wouldn't have let him go after child molesters. They'd have him go after patriots.
Yeah.
There's important
world,
work they gotta go for people that come to school board meetings. Remember that, Adam?
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're spying on school board meetings. You know what I saw on someone made a point on Twitter the other day. Let me see if I can find it. Actually, it was the most discrepant sentencing I've ever seen in my life, which was an abortion protester got like 11 years.
Yeah.
While an actual murderer got let off scot-free. Yeah. Sick. But that's where we're going, guys. Anyway, all right. We will have a stream sometime this week to talk about the actual news because this Kristina stuff is taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room. But we're doing it for a reason, folks. There's a county convention coming up a week from Thursday. You better be there. You better get your friends there, including, by the way, friends that are not precinct delegates because they're trying to raise non-precinct delegates into PDs. Beat them there, too. Be there, folks. Document it. Bring your cameras. Bring your people. This is a battleground, guys. Be there. Thursday, February 15th, your county convention. Find out where they are and get there. All right. Anything before we go?
Might even be some ball kicking.
Yeah, it might even be some ball kicking.
I have a shirt.
All right,
for that.
guys. All right. Thanks, guys, for all you for Liberty. We'll have another stream in the near future. I promise. I have a outro for the first time tonight on our stream, so we will end with that. And until next time, guys, thanks for all you for Liberty. Peace out.